Yo, what's up everyone? It's Legacy Shinobi here, back with another intense what if. Today, we're diving into what if Naruto was framed for Raikage's assassination. You already know this one's gonna be full of twists and action-packed moments. Before we jump in, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you're ready for more thrilling what ifs. Alright, let's dive straight into the story. Just as Tintin was about to stick the sealing tag on Naruto's forehead, a hand shot up abruptly and caught her wrist in a vice-like grip. The girl didn't even have time to react before she was yanked by her arm and thrown straight through the window on the opposite side of the hospital room. Tintin! Neji cried out and jumped out the window after her to rescue her. Due to Neji's shout, Naruto understood right away who the ones that had attacked him in his sleep were. Neji and Tintin. Konoha finally made a move, huh? Naruto said as he got up from the bed. To think you'd even go as far as to attack me in my sleep when I'm in the hospital. Since their preemptive strike had failed, Kakashi stepped forward in an attempt to salvage the situation before it could escalate any further. We're not trying to hurt you, Naruto. Secretly infiltrating Amigakure, sneaking into my hospital room in the middle of the night, and attacking me in my sleep. I may not be as smart as Sakura, but do you think I am that stupid? Our plan was to talk it over with you at first, but you were unconscious, and we couldn't afford to spend God knows how long waiting for you to wake up. Trust me, Naruto, I would never willingly hurt you. You are my student. While Kakashi was talking, Naruto heard the sound of the footsteps of half a dozen people approaching from the corridor. Was I not your student when you threw me into prison? Naruto shot back, his voice almost cracking due to his building rage. In the ninja world, those who break the rules are scum. That's true. But those who abandon their friends are worse than scum. That's what you told us years ago. Do you remember? I wonder what attacking the one who saved your fucking life makes you? What kind of trash not only betrays the one who saved their lives, but even tries attacking them in their sleep? Naruto-kun, we were in the wrong for not trusting you, yes, but we're sorry. Nobody thought you were actually guilty. Sakura, who had arrived a moment ago, said. Her voice sounded as if she was holding back tears. Come back with us to Konoha. We all need you there. Lady Tsunade misses you. And I miss you too, Naruto. I never realized how much I cared about you until you left. I think I'll love you. I don't know when I fell for you, but my heart . As she was talking, Naruto brought a hand to his face and ripped the white bandages wrapped around the upper part of his face. At the sight of his eyes, Sakura choked on her words and involuntarily stepped back. You love me? She was not the only one who reacted that way. Even Kakashi and Yamato subconsciously took a step back, their hands going to the kunai pouches strapped to their thighs, and Madogai got into a fighting stance. When Naruto opened his eyes, instead of the warm and bright blue eyes that everyone was familiar with, his eyelids revealed the cold and steely purple color of the Rinnegan. The deathly silence that was instilled in the hospital room made his voice sound eerie when he spoke next. Shinra Tensei, an unearthly sound rang, and then the outer walls of the hospital room were obliterated, with the Konoha Nins all getting blasted out violently. Lee, get a hold of yourself, Guy shouted while shaking Rock Lee's shoulders. Naruto's hospital room was located on one of the uppermost levels of the tower that served as the hospital. The full brunt of the almighty push, followed by his fall from such a great height, had left him unconscious. He can't be reasoned with, Yamato said. What are we doing, Captain? We follow the mission, Kakashi said in a defeated voice. Guy-sensei, everyone, what happened? Tintin shouted as she and Neji arrived at the place where they had crashed. The two of them had been lucky enough not to get caught in the almighty push. Naruto got Pain's Rinnegan, and he attacked us, Kakashi explained, standing up as all traces of hesitation left his voice. If he has the Rinnegan, I don't think it's possible for him to be under anyone's genjutsu. He attacked us of his own free will. He has no intention of returning to Konoha. But, Sensei, it's still Naruto. Sakura pleaded with tears streaming down her cheeks. You knew what you signed up for when you accepted this mission, Sakura, Kakashi said, not in the mood to entertain her feelings at that moment. We have 4 to 5 minutes tops before the Amigakure troops swarm us. We're on borrowed time now, Kakashi said as he removed his headband from his eye, revealing his Sharingan. Sakura, take Rock Lee and run to the sewers where Guy's summon is waiting for us. Don't question my orders, he said sharply. Due to how emotional she was, Kakashi did not want her to drag the entire team down with her crying or doing something dumb like trying to get between them and Naruto to defend him. Besides, someone had to take Rock Lee to safety. Guy, no feeling out process, no testing the waters. We don't know how many Rinnegan techniques he can use, so don't underestimate him. Start with the 5th gate directly and go up to the 7th gate if necessary. Yamato, protect us from all the incoming AIM Shinobi and Kunoichi. Don't spare any chakra. Use your largest area of effect technique. Niji, engage in taijutsu together with Guy and shut down his tenketsu. Tintin, don't interfere until I give you the signal. Be prepared to seal his chakra at any moment. Everyone, don't pull your punches. Remember, even without the Rinnegan, in his Sage mode, Naruto is not the type of opponent any of us can fight fair and square in a one-on-one. As long as you don't kill him, go all out. Letting out a shout of acknowledgement, everyone got ready to follow their orders. Mokuton, deep forest emergence, Yamato said and slammed his palms on the street below. Branches, roots, and tree trunks broke through the concrete and rose towards the sky. Enormous trees rivaling in height even the tens of meter-tall skyscrapers of Amigakure. With the hospital tower as the center, an entire district of the city was covered by a gigantic forest. I won't be able to control this jutsu for long, Yamato said, his forehead already drenched in sweat. Don't worry, Yamato-sensei. You won't have to, Naruto said as he landed in front of them. Come with us willingly, Naruto, Kakashi pleaded. This is the last time I ask you this. Don't make us do this. Don't make us fight you. If someone unrelated heard you speak, they'd think I'm the villain in this story and that you're the good guys. After saying that, an orange pigmentation appeared on the side of his eyes. Even in the darkness of the night, the orange markings of his Sage mode made a stark contrast with the steely purple color of his Rinnegan eyes. I'll send you packing back to Konoha, Naruto said, and 2 shadow clones appeared behind his back. Kakashi's eyes widened as he recognized the wind technique Naruto was about to cast when the 2 clones started molding chakra in the hand he raised above his head. Fast! Normally, it took Naruto several good seconds to create a Rasen Shuriken, which was a very long time in a fight between elite shinobi. However, for some reason, the Rasen Shuriken formed instantly this time. His Sharingan morphing into the pattern of the Mangekyo, Kakashi shouted right as Naruto threw the devastating wind jutsu at him. Kamui, I knew you were going to do that dash. Kakashi heard Naruto's voice coming from behind him. He had been so focused on Kamui Injouei the Rasen Shuriken, and Naruto's body flicker movement was so fast that Kakashi was caught completely off guard. He only had time to turn his head back and see the glowing sphere of blue chakra heading towards his face. Konoha Senpu, Guy screamed, and his whirlwind kick smashed mercilessly into Naruto's head, sending him flying. The blonde crashed so hard into a nearby building that he left a human imprint on its outer wall. Naruto wasn't allowed even a moment to catch his breath as Niji appeared at his side in an instant and shouted, 8 trigrams, 128 palms. However, to his shock, the first 10 lightning-fast gentle fist jabs he threw at him were all parried, and Naruto even counterattacked with a punch of his own. His taijutsu is still not up to par, Niji thought, as he easily weaved through the seemingly sloppy swing and was about to resume his onslaught of gentle fist attacks when a cracking pain in the side of his face made him see white for a moment. The next moment, Niji found himself flying through the air, unable to control any of his body's movements. He didn't even know what had hit him. The frog kata was almost impossible to defend against when faced with it for the first time. Even after crashing onto the ground, that Senjutsu-empowered strike was so powerful that Niji couldn't muster any strength to get back up again. He slipped into unconsciousness. However, right after knocking Niji away, a lightning beast pounced on Naruto from behind and shocked him. Even with the enhanced physical ability granted by his Sage mode, Naruto was paralyzed for a second. Nice, Kakashi. Guy yelled out in approval and then shouted, 5th gate, gate of closing, open. A vivid green aura burst from his body, and his pale skin turned a reddish-brown color. Leaf great flash, Guy yelled, throwing a head kick so powerful that it triggered a shockwave in its wake. An even louder shockwave rang when his shin smashed against his target, except that it wasn't Naruto's head. No freaking way. Tintin exclaimed in disbelief when she saw Guy's ferocious kick being stopped by Naruto with a single hand. Team Guy had been away from Konoha on a mission during Pain's invasion, so they hadn't seen Naruto's Sage Mode in person. All they knew were stories they heard from others. They didn't know that, in his Sage Mode, Naruto's physical strength enhancements were so insane that he could make craters with his punches, crush boulders in his hands, and throw around dozens of tons effortlessly. "If I fought you seriously, both Neji and you would be dead now," Naruto said, and Guy winced when Naruto's grip on his leg tightened to the point where his bones started creaking. Unable to hold her cool any longer, instead of listening to Kakashi's orders to not interfere in the fight, Tintin unfurled a large sealing scroll, and 3 throwing javelins appeared in her hands. "Let Guy-sensei go!" she yelled and threw all 3 javelins at Naruto in quick succession with deadly accuracy. Unfortunately, that proved to not be a very bright move as Naruto yanked Guy by the leg and threw him into the trajectory of the javelins, using him as a meat shield. The worst-case scenario did not come to pass, however, seeing as, at the very last moment, a mud wall rose from the ground between Guy and the incoming javelins courtesy of Kakashi. Kakashi had just finished casting the earth technique when Naruto lunged at him with another Rasengan in his hand. He managed to dodge the Rasengan by ducking under Naruto's lunge and came back with a chakra-enhanced uppercut, only for Naruto to blow up into his face. It wasn't the real him. It was a clone, and not just any clone but an exploding clone. Yamato also happened to shout from the distance at that moment, "The AIM troops have started attacking in full force. My Mokutan Jutsu won't last much longer." Rock Lee and Neji having been knocked out, Kakashi getting gravely injured by the exploding clone that blew up in his face, and Yamato's exhausted appearance as he struggled to hold back dozens of AIM shinobi that were trying to breach the giant forest he had created. As Mato Guy took in the situation, his facial expression hardened. "I've never used my 8 inner gates to their fullest power against an ally before. Despite your defection from Konoha, I still considered you one of my students and one of my comrades. However, you leave me with no other choice." "I am sorry, Naruto." As Guy said those words, he got into a stance with his hands crossed in front of his face. The veins on his forehead looked like they were about to burst when he shouted, "The 8 inner gates, 6th gate, Gate of Joy." As the cloak of green chakra around Guy more than doubled in intensity, Naruto got a bad feeling. Raising his hand and aiming it in his direction, he shouted, "Shinra Tensei." A massive force exploded from his hand, blasting Guy away like a leaf in a hurricane. The force of the almighty push was so powerful that it sent Guy flying through a tower and even destroyed the deep forest emergence technique in which Yamato had poured the entirety of chakra to cast. However, much to Naruto's disbelief, although battered, bruised, and bleeding from countless scrapes all across his body, Mato Guy was still standing when the Rinnegan technique ended. With the last drop of his strength, Guy screamed, "The 8 inner gates, 7th gate, Gate of Shock, open." As Guy took a stance with one of his palms forward, a feeling of danger washed over Naruto. One of the Toad's Sage Mode's abilities was to sense danger. "If I let him complete that move, I will die." Time seemed to slow down in his perception as a mixture of feelings bubbled in his heart. Disbelief that someone from Konoha would even go as far as to seriously try to kill him. Frustration at himself that he had not incapacitated Guy when he had had the chance. Unwillingness to leave the world of the living behind with so much unfinished work and so many unfulfilled promises. And at last, a feeling of rage suddenly exploded from his chest. It was an overpowering emotion that extinguished any other feelings he might have had. At that moment, as he made a tiger seal, Guy thrust his hands forward and screamed, "Hira Dash!" A split second before Guy could finish launching the ultimate move of his 7th gate, Daytime Tiger, Naruto raised his hand and shouted, "Bansho Tenin, Hugh!" Guy let out a grunt of surprise as he was unexpectedly yanked forward against his will. But even as he was being pulled forward, he maneuvered his body into a flying kick position, intent on taking Naruto's head off if he maintained the technique until the end. Guy's flying kick never reached Naruto, however. A screeching sound suddenly filled the air. Then, Guy's body was split in half cleanly by a Rasen Shuriken. Tintin and Yamato watched in horror how the devastating wind technique not only killed their comrade, but even reduced the rest of his body to atoms. Guy was dead, Kakashi, Niji, and Rock Lee were knocked out, and Yamato was on the brink of fainting due to chakra exhaustion. Tenten lost the feeling in her legs and fell to her knees in despair as she glanced up at Naruto, overwhelmed by panic and terror. The stony expression on his face and his inhuman Rinnegan eyes made him look especially menacing. From her distorted point of view, she did not notice the tears that started falling down his cheeks. Yo, Sasuke! An orange-masked man with a single eye appeared out of nowhere in front of Sasuke and his team, causing them to abruptly stop in their tracks. I didn't sense his chakra. He appeared out of nowhere. What's going on? Karen couldn't understand it. Nobody had ever fooled her senses before, due to her Kekkei Genkai. How did you know where to find me? Sasuke asked, his eyes narrowing at him. As far as he knew, he and his team had been traveling under the radar for the past several months, staying out of the public eye and plotting their next course of action. Don't underestimate me, Toby said. I have considerable powers, so what do you want with me now? Sasuke cut straight to the point. Taka left the Akatsuki. We're done with you. As it stands, you reneged on your promise to me, Obito said. His words made everyone in Sasuke's team become alert and prepared for battle. What are you talking about? I'm talking about hunting the tailed beast. We already caught the 8 tails and delivered them to you, Karen said. That was just a clone. A special clone technique, but a clone nonetheless. You've been fooled. In other words, you guys failed. While Sasuke was thinking back on the moment of his fight with Killer Bee in an attempt to discover when the Jinchuriki managed to escape, Toby continued. Frankly, I'm disappointed in you all. So what are you going to do about it? Suigetsu shot back snarkily. It's none of our business now. Nope. You will finish whatever work you started as members of the Akatsuki. But, having said that, forget about the 8 tails for now. I've decided to give you a different task, and if I refuse? Sasuke asked, then we'll fight it out right here. And you won't be able to go to the Hidden Leaf Village. Alas, it's too late for you to go to Konoha now either way. Konoha has already been destroyed. Sasuke, whose hand had just been engulfed by lightning, suddenly froze at his words. What do you mean by that? What the hell happened? How would Konoha just get destroyed overnight? You've been living under a rock in the past 2 months, or what? Toby said. But he did not continue to antagonize him and told him the short version of the events that had transpired. My subordinate Pain destroyed the Hidden Leaf Village. And since both you and Pain were a bit too overbearing, the 5 Kage are now in the middle of a summit. And what does that have to do with me now? Sasuke said belligerently. You don't get it, do you? Toby said with a shake of his head. With Pain dead, as of now, you have become the most wanted person in the elemental nations. And, especially with how cocky and reckless you've become, I'll give you 1 year at most before you end up dying in a ditch. At Sasuke's scoff, Toby asked a question. Tell me, Sasuke, have you ever seen a rogue nin from Kumogakure? Thrown off by the seemingly random question, Sasuke didn't reply. My bad, it was a poor choice of words on my part considering you're almost blind now, Toby said mockingly. When is the last time you heard about rogue ninjas hailing from Kumogakure? That's right, you haven't. Not in your lifetime. Do you know why? The Cloud Village has the most disciplined, numerous, and relentless Black Ops shinobi in the world. The Akatsuki had members from Suna, Iwa, Kiri, Konoha, and other minor villages, but none from Kumo. Kumo always takes care of its trash. Why are you telling me all of this? Sasuke shouted, starting to lose his patience. Get straight to the point. Toby shrugged uncaringly at his outburst and said, honestly, at first, my plan was to break into the Kage Summit and declare war on the 5 great elemental nations. But I ran into quite the unpredictable situation. Suigetsu and Karen both started laughing at him. You wanted to declare war on the 5 great hidden villages? All by yourself? Ha ha ha, you're out of your mind, Suigetsu said, holding onto his belly with his hands from laughing too hard. Ignoring the two that were clowning on him as if they were beneath his notice, Toby spoke again. I want you to help me retrieve something from one of the former members of the Akatsuki. You were going to declare war against the whole world. Beating up some rogue ninja should be a piece of cake for someone with your considerable powers. The sarcasm in Sasuke's words wasn't lost to Toby if the narrowing of his eye was anything to go by. Konan proved to be way stronger than I had expected. Looking back, She must have been one of the strongest members we had. I shouldn't have underestimated her considering she was the one who defeated Sasori and forced him to join, but that is not here nor there. Her power is hardly a problem. I won our little scuffle when we clashed, but I had not expected to see the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki come to her aid. Sasuke's face morphed into an expression of surprise. Naruto? Yes, Toby confirmed. Don't look down on him. He's not the same person you used to know. He's proven his strength when he defeated Pain. He is stronger than you now. But why would Naruto help a member of the Akatsuki? He's a Jinchuriki. It doesn't make sense. Ah, I must have forgotten to tell you, Uzumaki Naruto has defected from Konohagakure. What? Sasuke couldn't believe his ears. Of all people, Naruto became a missing nin? Naruto, who had chased him all over the continent in the past 3 years, trying to bring him back to the village? Honestly, his reaction was perfectly justified. No, if I had been him, I would have probably burned whatever was left of the village to the ground before leaving. Regardless, this is what I want you to do. Assist me in retrieving my possessions from Konan, the leader of AIM. You don't have to participate in the battle against her or the rest of the AIM shinobi. All you need to do is keep Uzumaki Naruto busy while I deal with her. Why would I do that? And don't tell me that you'll offer me protection. I can take care of myself just fine, Sasuke said. He had recently defeated the full form of the eight-tailed demon beast and its Jinchuriki too. Sasuke was so confident in the power of his Mangekyo Sharingan that he couldn't envision a scenario where he would lose to anyone anytime soon. Your vision is worsening by the day. The more you use your Mangekyo Sharingan abilities, the faster you will lose your sight. Do you remember these? Toby said, and took out a sealed flask containing a green liquid and 2 eyeballs. At Sasuke's grim look, Toby said in a self-satisfied voice, "That's right, I still have your brother's eyes." Sasuke glared at Toby, all the while mentally kicking himself for not having the presence of mind after his battle with Itachi to take away and preserve his body. But, in all fairness, Itachi's remains were the last thing on Sasuke's mind after their battle, due to how overwhelmed by emotions he was at that moment. You do understand what I mean, don't you? Toby said when he saw that Sasuke kept silent. Of course I do. Then, do we have a deal? All right. But I want to get the eye transplant before the fight. His words could be interpreted in 2 ways. Either that he did not trust Toby to hold his end of the bargain if he waited until the end of their job to get the eyes, or that he did not want to go to battle without Itachi's eyes and risk becoming blind in the middle of it. That's fine with me, Toby said with a shrug. Whether Sasuke had Itachi's eyes or not, to him it was all the same. Either way, he did not think Sasuke could pose a real threat to him. Let us go to our hideout. Do not resist. Saying those words, Toby took the Taka team into his Kamui dimension and disappeared in a swirl. As the rest of the Amigakure shinobi and Kunoichi apprehended the surviving but unconscious Konoha intruders and Konan sealed them with her paper ninjutsu, Naruto looked blankly at the destruction left behind by their battle. I had no choice, he muttered quietly. After Guy opened the 7th inner gate, his sage mode senses and his survival instincts screamed at him that he would die if Guy completed his attack. It was a kill or be killed situation. Done with sealing the invader's chakra, Konan glided through the air and landed in front of him. Due to the fact that it was raining heavily, nobody noticed his emotional struggle after killing Guy. By the time she came to him, he had somewhat regained his composure. "How are you feeling?" she asked, looking searchingly into his eyes. "Do you notice any discomfort or pain?" "No discomfort. No drain on my chakra either. I think my body accepted these eyes fully. But, more importantly, these aren't all the ninjas sent by Konoha. 2 more have run away towards the sewers. We have to capture them. Can you find them with your sensory technique?" An expression of surprise appeared on her face at his words. "They sneaked into Amigakure and attacked me in my sleep," Naruto explained himself. "This battle also injured many of our people and caused so much destruction. Former comrades or not, Konoha and I are past the point of reconciliation." "I see," Konan said, and her body split into countless tiny paper butterflies that dispersed and quickly covered the entirety of Amigakure. A few minutes later, the paper butterflies converged again, and Konan materialized next to Naruto. "I have found them, 2 teenagers, a girl and an unconscious boy." Turning to one of the close-by Black Ops shinobi wearing a rebreather, she said, Take a team of 10 chunins and guard the end of the main southeastern sewer pipe where it spills into the lake. Understood, the Jonin said and disappeared with a body flicker movement. Now looking back to Naruto, she said, "You've done enough for the day. I'll go capture those two myself. I want to see this through to the end." They dash. Putting a hand on his shoulder, she squeezed it softly as she said, "You were in the hospital until not long ago, and it's the first time you used your Rinnegan eyes. Rest for now. I have a feeling we won't be getting much rest in the days to come." "Okay," he said, caving in eventually. Despite being underground and almost 1 kilometer away, Sakura could still hear the sounds of battle between her comrades and Naruto. No matter how hard she tried, she could not banish the image of those inhuman-looking eyes from her mind. That pair of Rinnegan eyes made him look like a completely different person. But it wasn't only his eyes that were different now. The tone of his voice while speaking to them, the lack of warmth, and the rage bubbling underneath that calm exterior. As someone who had been one of his closest friends, if not the closest, Sakura could pick up on all those signs clearly. How could he have changed that much in such a short time? Not even 3 months have passed since the Hozuki Castle fiasco. The Kazekage did warn them in his short letter that Naruto appeared to be a completely different person, but she had not thought he was going to be that different. She was shaken from her thoughts when the tortoise boss suddenly let out a weary sigh. Yet another one of my contractors died. It wasn't sadness. The tortoise's voice sounded resigned. What do you mean?" Sakura asked, momentarily unable to understand the reality of the situation. "That youngster guy lost his life. Died ahead of his time, just like his father." Sakura was mute with surprise. "No way," she said eventually. "You must be mistaken. Guy-sensei is one of the strongest jonins in the village. There's no way he would die in a place like this. I don't believe it." Ignoring her rambling, the tortoise boss said, "My summoner is dead. I have no reason to help you anymore. You are on your own now." Leaving those words behind, the creature disappeared in a plume of smoke, returning to her realm. Several minutes later, Sakura was still overwhelmed with thoughts of disbelief. It was only when a swarm of paper butterflies appeared in the sewer seemingly out of nowhere and a blue-haired woman wearing the infamous Akatsuki black cloak with red clouds materialized in front of her eyes that she finally came back to her senses. "Akatsuki," she said warily, taking a fighting stance in front of the still unconscious Rock Lee. "Your comrades have already been defeated. This is the end of the road for you. I suggest you give up and come quietly." "Lies. There's no way Guy-sensei, Yamato-sensei, and Kakashi-sensei would lose to the likes of you," Sakura shouted, and before Konan could say anything else, the pink-haired girl lunged at her with a scream. Shinaro, cocking her fist back, Sakura threw the strongest chakra-enhanced punch that she was capable of. Under her devastating power, Konan's body burst into countless tiny pieces. At least that was what Sakura naively thought at first. She realized a second later that her enemy dispersed into a swarm of paper butterflies and reappeared at her back, completely unharmed. "Out of consideration for Naruto, I wanted to not harm you too badly, but it looks like you don't plan on coming along quietly." After saying those words, Konan became silent. Her stoic, pretty face and the rest of her body seemed to split like the pages of an open book, and the sewer was flooded with a swarm of countless paper sheets. Sakura could only punch and kick the air around her desperately as she was drowned in a sea of deadly paper blades, each one of them carving deep and painful cuts into her flesh. Feeling the threat of death, black markings spread from the seal on her forehead and covered her entire body as she activated her strength of 100 technique, healing up her numerous injuries in an instant. Confident in the regeneration ability of her jutsu, Sakura gave up on defending herself completely and lunged at Konan once more. However, unfortunately, she did not have an answer to Konan's paper kawarimi. Instead of harming Konan, her punch blew a huge hole into the sewer ceiling, revealing the downcast sky outside. Alas, her efforts did not amount to much in the end. Konan's paper technique was a hard counter to most fighters that specialized in taijutsu and bukijutsu. If Sakura's efforts had little effect even in an enclosed space like the sewers, when she blew up a hole in the ceiling and opened the sewers to the world outside, she unknowingly cemented her fate. However, by the time Sakura realized that she had dug her own grave, Konan had already flown up in the air. No, if she flies too high up, I won't be able to reach her. With Konan's flight advantage, she would become just a target practice for her paper projectiles. Grabbing an enormous chunk of concrete from the broken sewer ceiling, Sakura screamed as she threw it at Konan. I won't let you get away. That piece of debris had to have weighed several tons. It was an attack that could smash an average shinobi into nothing but a smear of blood upon contact. However, at that moment, a sound of a blade whooshing through the air was heard, and that huge piece of debris was split cleanly from the middle. The next thing Sakura knew, her right arm was also looped off from the shoulder. A scream of agony was ripped from her throat, and she collapsed on the ground, holding the stump of her bleeding shoulder with her other hand. Submit or die, Konan said one last time as the large paper chakram returned to her side, whirring menacingly above her head. But the pink-haired girl didn't reply. She appeared to have gone into shock, staring in disbelief at her severed limb on the ground. Gravely injured, but mostly because of her lack of mental fortitude, Sakura couldn't put up any resistance when a vortex of paper sheets engulfed her and wrapped around her like a mummy, binding her from head to toe. Hours passed, and the morning came. Although the sun was up now, the clouds covering the sky were so thick and dark that it looked as if it was evening. It was raining heavily again. Sipping from the mug of hot tea in her hands, Konan was watching over the village through the large windows of her office. Lady Konan, Uzumaki Naruto wishes to speak to you, one of her bodyguards informed her. Let him in. A few moments later, as Konan turned to greet him when he came through the door, an expression of surprise flashed on her face. Battered, wet, and dirty from the fight last night, Naruto ditched his regular clothes and put on another set of clothes given to him by Konan. Compared to his flashy orange tracksuit, which always made him stand out, his current attire was rather plain. Dark blue joggers, a black jumper, and a gray Amige Cure-style Jonin flak jacket. So you've made your final choice, Konan said. Was there any doubt after I took Nagato's eyes? Besides, I've never had any intentions of going back. I made you a promise, didn't I? Naruto said and grinned. As long as AIM doesn't turn their back on me like Konoha did, I will be here. Always. I think it suits you. I'm happy to have you here, Naruto. The two of them were not talking about Naruto's new attire. Those clothes were nothing to write home about. They were talking about the new shinobi headband resting on his forehead now. For the first time in his life, he was wearing a shinobi headband that did not belong to Konoha. Instead, the metallic plate showed 4 vertical lines. It was the symbol of the hidden rain. You're the first to wear the new headband of Amige Cure. Congratulations, she said, smiling at him. Following Hanzo's death at the hands of Nagato, after Akatsuki took over Amige Cure, the new symbol of the village was the 4 vertical lines slashed through by a horizontal line. It signified their hatred and rejection of Hanzo and the previous regime of Amige Cure. However, now that Naruto had taken on Nagato's Rinnegan eyes, Konan decided that it was time for AIM to step out of the shadows of the past and look at the future with hope. She renounced the slash-through headbands and adopted the original symbol. Naruto was given the honor of being the first to wear the new type of headband. Thank you, he said sincerely. He couldn't help feeling touched inwardly. In spite of everything he had done for Konoha, he had always been treated by his peers like a bum. Everyone from his generation had been promoted to a Chunin or even a Jonin rank except for him. Even after saving the village from pain, they still didn't promote him. He was still a Genin despite having become one of the most powerful shinobi in the village. But now, it was different. He finally had a rank that fit his strength and abilities. Now, he was a Jonin. Konan smiled at him again. In the back of her mind, she noticed that she had been smiling a lot more often ever since she rescued Naruto from Hozuki Castle. What do you want to do with your former comrades? She unexpectedly asked after she finished congratulating him. I am not sure. Although they had invaded Amige Cure and attacked him when he was at his weakest, while lying in a hospital bed after surgery, Naruto could not bear the thought of killing them in cold blood after they had been defeated. What do you think we should do? He asked her. Normally, there are 2 paths we could take. First, we could squeeze all the intel they have on Konoha through any means necessary, and after they are dead, we could examine their bodies to unearth their secret techniques. In Hatake Kakashi and Hyuga Niji's case, we would also extract their Dijitsu and use them for Amige Cure's sake. There is also the possibility of keeping the Hyuga and the Mokuton users alive and locked up in order for them to produce offspring with their Kekii Genkai. Naruto involuntarily started frowning when he heard those words. It sounded terrible, but this is the ninja world. This is the world we live in. He knew Konan was not lying or exaggerating because he had been in Orochimaru's secret bases before and had seen traces of his experiments. He was also aware of Kumogakure's attempt to kidnap Hyuga Hinata in the past for the sake of obtaining the Byakugan. But he had not thought about it too deeply before, single-mindedly pursuing his dream of becoming the Hokage and making Sasuke come back to the village. He ignored everything else. The other choice would be to treat them as war prisoners and try to strike a deal with Konohagakure no Sato to trade them in exchange for various goods, techniques, or even money. Done explaining, Konan looked into Naruto's eyes while asking, "What do you want to do with them?" "I am leaving their fate in your hands. It is your choice." Despite no longer thinking of them as his precious people, years of being comrades with them did not get wiped clean after only a few months of being away from Konoha. If possible, Naruto did not wish for them all to die or suffer like that. Maybe we could try to trade them in exchange for resources? We could make Konoha trade large amounts of coal and other things that Amigakure needs. Kakashi is a very important figure in the village. He was an ANBU captain in the past. Yamato has the legendary Mokutan bloodline limit, and Sakura is the Hokage's prized disciple, Naruto said hesitantly. "If that is your choice, then that's what we are going to do," she said calmly, taking a sip from her mug of tea. "Thank you, Konan." Even he could understand that if it were the leader of any other hidden village, they would never pass up on the chance to get their hands on 3 of the most powerful Kekii Genkai in the world: the Mokutan, the Sharingan, and the Byakugan. He was not so dense as to not understand what a huge favor Konan was doing him at that moment. Nearly 4 days had passed since the Battle of Amigakure, but Naruto had yet to visit the Konoha prisoners even once. Instead, he had been away from the village, spending those days in an uninhibited place not far from the border with Iwagakure. He had chosen that spot because a rocky terrain was more useful for his training than a swamp. Bansho Tenin. As he said those words, a large boulder got yanked out of the ground and flew at him with great speed. Simultaneously, a shadow clone next to him raised his hand and yelled, "Shinra Tensei." Caught between the attractive and repulsive forces of those two techniques, the boulder exploded, unable to handle the pressure. "It's great that I can bypass the 5-second cooldown of the Deva path if I use shadow clones, but this shared vision is so troublesome. It'll take me some time to get used to it." Nevertheless, the temporary loss of the ability to create large numbers of shadow clones was hardly a minus when he looked at the absurdly powerful techniques of the Rinnegan, momentarily making a ram seal with his hands to better concentrate on his task. Another 2 pairs of arms grew out from his shoulders, and 2 other heads popped out from his neck too, giving him the appearance of a mythical Azura. "I still can't get used to this, man. You look creepy as hell," his shadow clone said, shuddering. In response to that, one of Naruto's extra arms transformed into a cannon, and a chakra blast obliterated the clone. He was so used to his clones getting killed in fights that the memories of the clone he had just destroyed didn't perturb him in the least. "It might look creepy, but having 3 heads gives me 360-degree vision, and the extra pair of arms could give me a big edge in taijutsu, especially if I combined it with my senjutsu and if the enemy doesn't expect it." Following that train of thought, Naruto started performing the katas he had learned from the Toads by using all 6 of his arms simultaneously. From a spectator's perspective, it looked strange, even silly, how he fumbled and how his arms sometimes collided against each other during movements. It was hard for the human brain to control so many extra limbs perfectly without training. But he was not discouraged. It all boiled down to the amount of work he was willing to put in, and he had never shied away from training. Back in Amigakure, one of Naruto's shadow clones was sitting on a sofa in the living room of his apartment and reading a scroll. Given that it was evening, past the curfew, he was straining his eyes to understand the tiny scribbles under the pale light coming from a small gas lamp. "I should call it a day. It's late, and I need to preserve my chakra too," the clone thought. Rolling back the scroll, he put it on the coffee table and lied down on the sofa on his side with an arm under his head. He was about to fall asleep when he heard someone knocking on the door. "Naruto, are you still awake?" Konan's warm, quiet voice came from behind the door. "Yes, one moment," the clone said as he got up and went to open the door. "Hey, what brings you here at this late hour?" he asked as he invited her in and led her to the living room. I wanted to talk to you. Is it a bad time? No, I've been reading until not long ago, he said, gesturing towards the pile of scrolls on the coffee table. Ah, Nagato's Fuinjutsu scrolls, she said in understanding. Have you found what you've been looking for? It's too complicated for me. I don't understand much of what's written in them. I told you as much, didn't I? She said, and he was treated to the beautiful sound of her soft laughter. It takes a long time and a lot of studying to become adept at Fuinjutsu, and if you don't know the basics, it'll be useless to attempt the more advanced sealing techniques, especially the ones created by the Uzumaki clan. Ugh, I hate studying, he moaned, but I made Kyubi a promise. I can't give up just because it's hard. Then you should start with the basics and slowly work your way up. I'm not a seal master like Nagato, but I could guide you up until an intermediate level. You just want me to draw storage sealing scrolls and exploding tags for yourself, don't you? Naruto said, looking at her suspiciously. He felt something inside him flutter when he heard her laughter again. Well, you need to start from somewhere, don't you? She said with a small grin and rested her chin on her palm as she looked at him. He found it physically impossible to tear his eyes away from her. Whether it was because of his gradually evolving feelings for her, or because of the increased vision offered by his recently acquired Rinnegan, he was not sure, but he was becoming increasingly aware and conscious of her beauty as a woman. Those bright orange eyes of hers in particular were mesmerizing. I'm sure boss will be happy to help you if you ask him. I know I would do it, and we're pretty much the same, he said with a grin too, rubbing the back of his head. When is he coming back? She asked. I don't know yet, but he will give me a sign when he wants me to summon him here. While Naruto didn't know what his clones were thinking and feeling until after they were dispelled due to his Rinnegan eyes, he shared their sight nowadays. All he had to do was put it into writing, and his clone would be able to understand what he wanted regardless of the distance. Oh, he said he wants me to summon him now, the clone suddenly said and stood up. Getting up from the sofa, the clone went to the open side of the room and, after a short sequence of hand seals, he placed his hand on the floor. Kuchiyos no Jutsu. As the original Naruto stepped out of the plume of smoke, the clone smirked at him and said, "You're so lucky, boss." After the clone was dispelled, Konan involuntarily started smiling at the sight of Naruto's face getting red. No doubt due to the thoughts and memories he received from his shadow clone. The summoning technique of the Rinnegan is so convenient. As long as I carry these black receivers, my clones can summon me anywhere, he said, trying to push away the not exactly family-friendly thoughts he had received from the clone. Looking at Konan, he suddenly got an idea. Would you like to carry one of these as well? I think it would be great to be able to summon you away in times of need. I already carry one of those. It's right here, she said, touching her lower lip with her finger. You mean that piercing is made from this stuff? He asked, looking at the small labrate piercing under her bottom lip. But then, outside of his control, his eyes darted away from her small piercing to her lips, their pink color, their delicious fullness, and their moist, slightly glossy appearance that, yes, you can summon me anytime. So absorbed was he in admiring her lips that when she spoke, he was almost startled. But if Konan noticed his eyes lingering on her lips longer than was appropriate, she did not mention it. She merely smiled. How did your training go? Have you become more familiar with your Rinnegan's abilities? I still have a long way to go. I can control Deva Path's attractive and repulsive force as well, but Chibaku Tensei is too difficult at the moment. It explodes after a few seconds. I'm also struggling with the Azura Path. It's so hard to control 6 pairs of arms at once, and I haven't had a chance to train the human path, the Naraka path, or the outer path. As for the animal path, nothing comes up when I'm using the summoning technique. Preta path is the only one I can use perfectly. He scratched his hair with both hands in impatience. I suggest you focus on the Deva path and the human path for now. Why? In preparation for the next time Uchiha Madara comes back. I've been thinking of ways to defeat his ability, Kimyuri, but my options are limited after such a short time, and due to Amagekyure's current financial situation. It took me several years to gather all those paper bombs, and Madara still won because of his Sharingan, she said in a dejected voice. Her strategy, all her preparation, and the fortune she had poured into the plan. All for Madara to cast Izanagi and rewrite his fate. Not all was for naught, however, she said. Although I lost the battle, I gathered another piece of information from it, something that will be vital in our preparation for our next battle. But first, I will share with you what I already know about his abilities. As far as I know, Madara has 4 main abilities: becoming intangible, teleporting himself, teleporting other people or objects, and rewriting his destiny at the price of losing a Sharingan eye. I'm not completely sure, but I suspect his intangible state is automatic, so surprise attacks might not work on him. How are you supposed to hit him? How did I manage to kick him in the face? He asked. His ability is very strong, but even so, it's not perfect. Every jutsu has a weakness. In Kamuri's case, it has a maximum duration of only 5 minutes, and he cannot attack you while he is intangible or teleport away. He needs to materialize first before doing that. Therefore, the only strategy one could think of was to bait him into materializing himself and counter-attacking him at that exact moment. What I discovered in our last fight, though, was that even though he is intangible, his body still follows the laws of the world. Naruto tilted his head in confusion at her last sentence. What do you mean by that? Sorry, I was never good with that type of stuff. Konan hummed in thought for a few moments before saying, when I split the lake underneath his feet and detonated all those paper bombs, Madara turned himself intangible to escape from the explosions. But I noticed that even though he became invulnerable, the force of gravity still pulled him down. That means that the attractive and repulsive forces of your Rinnegan should affect him even in his intangible state. So even if his space-time technique makes him invulnerable, his body is still affected by the laws of physics like gravity. I think I understand, Naruto said, deep in thought. But even if the Deva Path abilities work on him, how will they hurt him if he's intangible? That's where I come in. I will prepare another death zone for him. Not just one, but several of them for the case where he tries to cast Izanagi again. Your job will be to make him walk into my traps, and I'll deal the finishing blow. Will you be able to get that many paper bombs in again in a short while? I won't be using explosive tags this time around. I have a different plan now, she said confidently. Now this is ninjutsu, Naruto said, his voice giddy with excitement as he watched his 5 shadow clones conjure 5 dragons made from 5 different elements. His Rasengan and Kage Bunshin combo had carried him throughout his career as a shinobi just fine, but seeing himself be able to cast techniques for all 5 elements simultaneously left him with a special feeling. I wish I had learned more techniques aside from Rasengan and Kage Bunshin. In retrospect, the 2 sensei that he had before never bothered to teach him their ninjutsu. Kakashi was famous as the copy ninja and was said to know over 1,000 jutsu, but all that Naruto had ever learned from him was the importance of teamwork and the tree and water walking. As for Jiraiya, he had focused mostly on trying to make him control Kyuubi's chakra. Despite training for over 2 years under the guidance of the Toad Sage, a big ball Rasengan and slightly better taijutsu were all that Naruto had to show for it. But now that he had gained an affinity for all 5 elements thanks to Nagato's Rinnegan, he felt like it would be a crime not to take full advantage of his newly acquired abilities. And Konan was more than willing to provide him with all the jutsu scrolls in the possession of Amage Cure because the stronger Naruto got, the safer Amage Cure was going to be too. Is this how it feels to be a genius? He asked himself in wonder. Although he had mastered the Rasengan faster than Jiraiya, Naruto had never considered himself a genius because he knew that if the training time of his shadow clones was added to the total, it would amount to several months, if not even a year. But the mastery of the 5 elements given by the Rinnegan, coupled with the training experience received from his shadow clones, was simply overpowered. He had never had such an easy time mastering a jutsu until now. Whether it was a banal, hidden in the mist technique or a large-scale, swamp of the underworld jutsu, he mastered all of them within a few hours. It felt surreal. Okay, that's enough. Now activate the Azura Path and cast 2 jutsu simultaneously, he ordered his clones. A second pair of arms came out of his torso while his original pair of hands went through a quick sequence of hand seals. Suiton, water vortex. As he started spitting out a violent vortex of water, he also finished casting the second technique with his other pair of hands. Right-un, electromagnetic murder. A wave of lightning came from the Azura hands and turned the water vortex into a technique not that different from Kumo's prized Kekkei Genkai, storm release. It was a deadly vortex of electrified water. On the opposite side of him, a clone was using the Preta path, absorbing the techniques that he was casting. His other 4 clones were following his example too, with 2 of them casting combination techniques through the use of the Azura Path and the other 2 using the Preta Path to absorb the ninjutsu thrown at them. It was like an infinite chakra glitch. Nevertheless, even with the trick of using the Preta Path, by the time evening came, he still felt himself reaching the bottom of his chakra reserves. It used to be an extremely rare occurrence for him to run out of chakra, but ever since he got the Rinnegan, he started experiencing mild symptoms of chakra exhaustion nearly every evening. It took him several good hours of training for that to happen, but the fact that it happened at all spoke volumes of how chakra-hungry a Jujutsu like the Rinnegan was. One last jutsu, and I'll call it a day, Naruto thought, and put his hands together like in prayer. As a small sphere of white energy appeared between his palms, he said, "Chibaku Tensei." Parting his palms, the white sphere of chakra became black and flew up in the air, easily breaking through the ceiling of the room and gaining nearly 100 meters in altitude in just a second. Wait, what's with that ceiling? Why was there a ceiling at all? He had been in the middle of nowhere, at the foot of a mountain, not far from the border between IWA and AIM. There weren't any human settlements anywhere close by. "Naruto-chan, what are you doing?" 2 shouts came at the same time, and at the sound of them, Naruto's back broke into a sweat, having recognized the place he was currently in. "How in the world did I get here?" he shouted. "Forget about that. Stop that jutsu, or our home is dash." That voice stopped halfway as the ceiling and the walls suddenly splintered and started flying up in the air, attracted by Chibaku Tensei's gravitational force. Naruto quickly put his hands back together like in prayer, and 2 seconds later, the technique was cancelled. All the debris it collected before falling from the sky now like hail. "My home!" the female voice cried out in anguish. "Ma, Pa, our home, it was dash, Ma." Look at his eyes. Ma and Pa, the 2 elders of the Toads, looked at Naruto's ringed purple eyes in trepidation. "The Rinnegan, Grandpa Sage, Granny Sage, I'm so sorry," Naruto said, bowing repeatedly. He had not intended to destroy their house, but their summoning was too unexpected. He was so caught up in focusing on casting Chibaku Tensei that he had not even noticed when he was whisked away. Seeing Naruto bow and apologize like that, the 2 elder Toads somewhat regained their calm. "Why have you summoned me here again?" he asked. "The great Lord Elder has divined your future, and he wanted to see you," Lord Fukasaku said. "But more importantly, is my sight betraying me in my old age, or did your eyes change into the Rinnegan? What happened to you, Naruto boy? It's a long story, but Konoha cast me out. I was framed for an assassination attempt on the Raikage, and they didn't want to give me the chance to defend myself. I was thrown into Kusagakure's prison with my chakra sealed." "I can't believe it," Lady Shima said. "After everything you've done for the village, they did that? If it wasn't for you, most of them would be dead now. It's thanks to you that Pain brought everyone he killed back to life. If what you said is right, Jiraiya and Minato must be rolling in their graves now. But are you truly sure that is the case?" Lord Fukasaku said, also having a hard time believing his ears. "Are you sure it isn't all a big misunderstanding or something else?" "I don't know what to believe," Naruto said. "One on hand, they told me that, all along, everything had been a plan to discover Kusagakure's secret plans, and that they never believed I really was guilty. But on the other hand, after I ran away from the village, Konoha sent their most elite shinobi to capture me and bring me back by force. Kakashi, Guy, Hyuganiji, and even Yamato, who has the Mokuton. They attacked me in my sleep, while I was in the hospital." The Toad Elders listened in silence as Naruto narrated everything that happened. He told them how Konan had broken him out of prison and offered him shelter, how Konan gifted him Nagato's Rinnegan, and how the Konoha shinobi attacked him while he was sleeping, recovering from the surgery. Lastly, he also told them that, when they saw how powerful he was now that he had the Rinnegan, Guy went as far as to open the 7th gate and tried to kill him, which in turn forced him to use lethal force to stop him. "I can't believe so many things have happened in these few months we haven't seen each other," Lord Fukasaku said. "But now I see why the great Lord Elder wanted to see you. It was indeed I who summoned you, what was your name again?" The great Lord Elder Toad began to say, but he stopped his act of bumbling like a senile old fool, and his eyes opened wide when Naruto looked up at him and locked eyes with him. The Rinnegan. Hagoromo's eyes. Now it all makes sense. Naruto looked at him in silence, waiting for the toad to sort out his thoughts. I have received a prophecy involving you. More accurately, I have seen 3 visions. Are you ready to hear them? I am. Soon, an old enemy will come to take from you something of great importance. I couldn't see it clearly in my vision, but now that you are in front of me, I can tell what it is. And you can probably tell that too. As expected, Naruto said, unfazed. If his interpretation of the prophecy was correct, the old enemy was coming to take his Rinnegan away. Uchiha Madara. Naruto inwardly said that name with hatred. He was the one who murdered his mother and the reason why Yondaime Hokage had to sacrifice his life for the sake of sealing the 9-tailed fox inside of him. He was the root of all the suffering and pain he had experienced as a child in Konoha, and, more recently, he was also the one who had almost killed Konan. Seemingly oblivious to the negative feelings boiling in Naruto's heart, the great Lord Elder Toad continued speaking. In the second vision, I saw a war between shinobi that engulfed the whole world. Not one nation managed to stay neutral. Even our Mount Mayaboku was burning. All I could see was war, death, and destruction. A deathly silence was instilled when the venerable Toad finished speaking. This war, what are the chances that your vision is wrong? Naruto asked. The 5 great hidden villages just had a Kage summit in the Land of Iron. Konan told me that the Konoha, Suna, Kumo, Iwa, Kiri, and the samurai from the Land of Iron have forged an alliance to destroy the Akatsuki. I don't think they will start a war amongst themselves anytime soon. Akatsuki may not be strong enough to fight against all 5 strongest nations in the world, but what if Uchiha Madara got his hands on your Rinnegan eyes? Don't dismiss the prophecy. The great Lord Elder's visions have never been wrong, Naruto boy, Lord Fukasaku said. You're also forgetting something, Naruto-chan, Lady Shima said. As far as the world at large knows, the Land of Rain is still the lair of Akatsuki, isn't it? And the current leader of Amage Cure used to be the right-hand woman of pain. Her words drained all color from Naruto's face as it finally dawned on him. You're saying that their alliance is for the sake of destroying Amage Cure? He said in shock. We can't know that for sure, but it is a very likely scenario. What about the third vision? What did you see? Naruto asked. In response to that, the great Lord Elder called out a name. Geratora. At his words, a small, black and orange toad appeared by the Elder's throne in a plume of smoke. You called me, Great Elder? In my vision, I saw you storing yourself inside of Naruto. What? The small toad said in outrage. Give him the 4th Hokage's seal. His arms crossed in front of his chest. Geratora was the picture of reluctance as he said, I have no choice but to do as you say, Great Lord Elder. But are you sure he is ready for it? I still didn't forget what happened the last time Jiraiya asked me to loosen his seal. The beast inside took over right away. Nevertheless, at the Elder Toad's silence, Geratora let out a long sigh, and his body grew in height before rolling to the side, revealing the fact that his torso looked like one large scroll. When the toad finished unfurling his scroll-like body completely, a large and complex sealing formula appeared on it. What is this? Naruto asked in surprise. It is the key left by the 4th Hokage that locks and unlocks the sealing jutsu on your belly. It is the key to the gates sealing the bijou inside of you. With this, you can even let the 9 tails run free if that is what you want, Geratora explained. Come, press on that square area there with your hand. With this, you will have the means to do what Yondaime has hoped for. You will be able to fight for Kyuubi's power and wrestle its chakra away for yourself. Knowing the hardships Naruto had endured the last time he let Kyuubi take over him, Geratora had inwardly expected him to hesitate at first. But he didn't. Right as the toad finished his words, Naruto's fingers became alight with chakra as he placed his hand on the square at the top right side of the sealing formula. He had wanted to find a way to release Kyuubi for weeks now. That's the reason why the clone that was stationed in Amage Cure had started studying Fuin Jutsu, and why it was now helping Konan draw storage seals. Naruto didn't care about Fuin Jutsu in particular, and studying wasn't his strong suit, to say the least. Everything was for the sake of keeping his promise to Kyuubi, to free him from prison without losing his life in the process. Contract complete. I'm going into storage now. Going into storage? What do you mean? You don't need to do a thing. Just keep your mouth open. What? Naruto said and stepped back warily. Yes. Now say, ah. Come on. Don't waste time. You sound suspicious as heck, Naruto refused to comply. Don't act like a baby. Open your damned mouth. No. Look, do you want the key to QB's seal or not? That made him cave in. 2 seconds later, as he was choking, gasping for air, he found out that he was right to be suspicious of the small toad. Konohagakure no Sato. The production of timber can't meet the demand. It goes the same for producing bricks, tiles, and other materials for buildings. We've been importing grains from the land of rice and the land of rivers, and fish from the land of waves, for the past 3 months without paying for it. Our debts are piling up, and they request that we honor our deals. The Tushchikage informs us that his scouts have been detecting unusual activity at their border with the Land of Rain. There are signs of large-scale, powerful jutsu being used. With how numerous the Land of Rain shinobi are, he suspects they are drilling their troops and preparing for war. After another half-dozen bad news stories, Tsunade said, "Is there anything that goes well for once? Do you have any good news for me at all, Shizen?" "I'm sorry, Tsunade-sama." Suddenly, an ANBU operative appeared in front of Tsunade without a sound and lowered himself to one knee before reporting. Chunin Tintin has been sighted by the Barrier Corps and taken into custody. According to her words, the S-rank mission in Amigakure has failed. What? Tsunade shouted in surprise, her chair making a screeching sound as she abruptly stood up. "Take me to her right away." TNI Department HQ. Half an hour later, Tsunade had a hard time hiding her disbelief. Naruto got the Rinnegan? Guy was killed? Shikaka Nara, Ibiki Marino, and Inoichi Yamanaka, who were present during Tintin's questioning, were just as shocked as their Hokage. They had all witnessed with their own eyes the terror of pain and his overwhelming, godlike power. He had single-handedly annihilated most of Konoha's shinobi and turned one of the most powerful villages in the world into a crater. But Guy had the 8 inner gates technique. How could he have lost against someone who had just acquired the Rinnegan? Naruto didn't have any time to master it. He was still in the hospital when you went to capture him, was he not? Furthermore, Yamato with Mokutan and Kakashi with the Sharingan. How could they have lost that easily? The Nara said, "According to our research, Dujitsu have a sort of genetic memory inscribed in their DNA," Ibiki said. "Most shinobi with ocular powers know how to use their abilities instinctually. We have to do something. We are going to do something, right? We can't leave everyone there." Tintin said in desperation, "Hokage-sama, we are going to save them, aren't we? We can't just barge into Amigakure now that Naruto has the Rinnegan," Shikaku said with a shake of his head. "Tintin, you weren't here when pain destroyed the village, so you didn't see it. It was like the power of a god. Numbers are meaningless against such a power. Since it's been more than 2 weeks since he acquired the Rinnegan, given Naruto's track record with his shadow clones, he must have already mastered most of the Rinnegan's abilities by now. Are you going to leave them there?" Tintin shouted in disbelief. "We've risked our lives for the village more times than I can count. And Guy-sensei died. How could you even suggest that?" "Calm down, girl," Ibiki said, frowning at her. Nobody said anything about abandoning them. As Ibiki made a sign to one of the members of his TNI department, Tintin was escorted out of the interrogation room, leaving only the 4 of them sitting at the table. "You've been quiet the entire time. What's on your mind, Inoichi?" Tsunade asked. "I'm trying to gauge Naruto's mental state at the moment. We all know that he felt betrayed and probably thought that the village had cast him out. However, if Tintin's words are anything to go by, he had not been fighting with the intent to kill them at first. That means that he still does not hate Konoha to the point of wanting to kill everyone on sight. But Guy's death at his hands shows us that he is willing to do anything to not come back if pushed into a corner hard enough." Ibiki nodded in agreement. "I think so too." The fact that he had taken on Pain's Rinnegan also cements the idea that he had switched his allegiance to Amigakure forever. I don't think Pain's right hand, Konan, would have offered him that power if she had not been sure of his loyalty to her. It may be presumptuous of me to say this, Hokage-sama, but I think we need to accept that Naruto might never want to come back. Tsunade sat with her face buried in her hands, not saying anything for a while. "What are your thoughts on their offer?" she said eventually and gestured towards the open scroll on the table. The leader of Amigakure let Tintin go, knowing that Konoha wouldn't doubt her words. If she had only sent a letter to inform us of our shinobi's capture, we wouldn't necessarily believe it right away and would try to verify the information first by sending another team. By sending Tintin back to Konoha, The leader of AIM reduced any feeling out process and wasted time, skipping directly to the phase of negotiations. Related to that, freeing Tintin doesn't lessen Amagecure's leverage over Konoha either, because Tintin has no real value as a hostage. With or without her in prison, it was all the same. I must give it to her. If we're talking about tactics and politics alone, AIM's leader is not your average kunoichi, Shikaku said. I didn't ask you to sing her praises, Shikaku, Tsunade said, mildly annoyed. What I'm asking is for your thoughts related to this offer. Our reserves of coal are still plentiful for now, but we still don't have enough to cover their demand. We'd be forced to import, but we've already amassed large debts by importing food from neighboring countries. If we dip into our reserves of coal too, that is yet another large expense that the village momentarily can't afford. We can't just give up on our people either, Inoichi said categorically. You think I don't know that? Tsunade said, slapping the table angrily. Sakura was among the ones held hostage by the Land of Rain, too. Sakura was her student, someone in whom she had invested much of her time and effort. She didn't want to see her successor dead either. These conditions are too harsh on us, Shikaku said after a while. The amount of coal that Konan demanded from Konoha in exchange for the lives of the Kakashi and the rest was astronomical. It would be enough for a large and populous city like Amagekure to burn for more than 1 year. In the first place, Konohagakure didn't even have such a large amount stored up in one place. We should try to negotiate. Let's request a face-to-face meeting. This way, we can gauge their strength, their intelligence, and their intentions much more accurately. Will they accept that? Ibiki asked. Oh, they will, Shikaku said confidently. The fact that they tried to speed up the process for the sake of this transaction lets us know that they are pressed for time too. If you recall what Tintin said, they first attacked Naruto in the hospital after the curfew, when the power was cut. Considering that they have a curfew and that they are trying to trade for coal, that means that their reserves are running low. Which is not surprising, if you ask me. That makes sense, Tsunade said in agreement. The Land of Rain was completely shut off from their neighbors for almost a decade. No trading and no diplomatic relationships with the surrounding countries either. Considering that it has become known that the Land of Rain is also the Akatsuki's country of origin, they must have a hard time finding a willing trading partner too. So their problems aren't any less than ours, huh? Ibiki said while rubbing his chin. Having reached a consensus with her advisors, Tsunade grabbed a pen and a scroll from Ibiki and started writing a response to the letter from AIM. 2 days after he returned from Mount Mayaboku, now back in the Land of Rain, the original Naruto wasn't training for once. He was still away from the city, in his usual training ground. But instead of practicing his Rinnegan jutsu, he was sitting cross-legged on the ground, meditating with his eyes closed. When he opened his mental eyes, he found himself in front of Kyuubi's cage. Compared to their encounter several weeks ago, the fox was much more mellow and calm, merely watching Naruto in silence. What have you come here for? The toads recently gave me the key to Yandame's seal. The key to this gate, Naruto said, pulling up his sleeve and showing him the tattoo-like inscription that appeared on his palm and the back of his forearm. I could open the seal right now, at this very moment, and set you free. Now that got Kyuubi to stand up on all fours and look at him with such intensity that Naruto felt his skin prickling. I've been imprisoned for less than 2 weeks, but he's been jailed for nearly 100 years. God knows how much he craves freedom, how much he wants to get out of this darkness and see the world outside. Naruto thought, I want to keep my promise to you, but at the same time, I don't want to die either. I saw what happens to Jinchuriki when the bijou inside of them gets taken out. They die. That's how Gaara died. That's how my mother died too. But you did speed up the process by skewering her with your claws. If you're expecting an apology from me, you can fuck off, Kyuubi said with a growl, his rage starting to build up. I don't need your apologies, Naruto said. They wanted to imprison you. You wanted to escape. If anything, the fault lies with them and with the first Hokage, who was the first to seal you and treat you as a weapon. As Kyuubi remained silent, Naruto continued. Yandame made this key hoping that one day I would become able to take your chakra and control your power. The toads told me so too. Despite the fact that the fox started growling menacingly, Naruto wasn't affected. But I don't need it. I don't want your power when the price for that is that you are imprisoned. I know what it is like to be caged. You don't deserve that. You should be free. What are you scheming? Kyuubi narrowed his eyes at him as he asked. There's not a being in this world that doesn't lust for the power of the Nine Tails. My power. Uchiha Madara wanted it. Konoha wanted it. You wanted it too. You've asked me for power more times than I can count. But now you're saying you don't need it? Now I have the Rinnegan, Naruto said, looking at his reflection in the pooling water on the floor. This Dojutsu is so powerful that it scares me sometimes. I've barely mastered half of its techniques, but I feel like I could defeat even 4 or 5 of the previous version of myself at once. Locking eyes with Naruto's ringed, purple Rinnegan, Kyuubi felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end when the blonde said, I have become strong. I am truly powerful now. I have no doubt that I could force you to submit to my power right now and rob you of all your chakra. But I'd rather set you free. You've been jailed for too long. You've suffered for too long. Kyuubi was silent for a long time, his slit red eyes peering deeply into Naruto's as if to gauge the truth in his words. Due to his negative emotion sensing ability, the fox could tell that Naruto had not lied to him in the least. Everything he said was sincere. It was the utmost truth. But even with that assurance, Kyuubi was having a hard time wrapping his mind around the fact that Naruto truly didn't want his power, that he didn't want him to suffer, that he wanted to set him free. You said you don't want to die just yet. How do you plan on unsealing me? Kyuubi asked eventually, his voice subdued and rather quiet, not carrying the rage and aggression from before. I've been thinking about it for several days before I came up with an idea. I could set you free as long as you sign a contract with me. Although he started feeling suspicious at hearing the word contract, Kyuubi couldn't contain his curiosity and his hope. For the first time in decades, a glimmer of hope appeared amidst the volcano of rage smoldering in his heart. How would you make that work? By using the outer path and the animal path of the Rinnegan. Through these black receivers, Naruto said, and a black metallic rod grew out of his palm. Then, under Kyuubi's disbelieving eyes, he stepped through the bars of the gates confidently. Just try it. I will send you flying. Naruto dared him to attack him with a smirk. Kyuubi let out a low growl at his provocation, but he didn't attack Naruto. He was well aware of Rinnegan's abilities. Here, feel it for yourself, Naruto said, and he handed the black rod to Kyuubi, who grabbed it with his long claws as if it were a tiny toothpick. I can feel your chakra being transmitted through this. It's possible to make it go both ways. This way, your chakra and mine will be linked to each other. In times of need, you could push your chakra into my system and vice versa. What's the catch? This sounds too good to be true. I told you, didn't I? You'll have to sign a contract. You will be tied to my Rinnegan. The moment you accept the chakra transmitters in your body, you won't be able to take them out by yourself, and our chakras will become linked. I will be able to summon you, and you will be able to summon me too. A small part of your chakra will remain in my system at all times so I don't die. And you also get to roam free and do whatever it is that mountain-sized foxes like you like to do in their free time. Kyuubi started pacing back and forth inside the cage restlessly. He had wished for freedom for so long that now that it was presented to him, he was almost afraid to take it. The deal Naruto was offering him at that moment was almost too perfect to be real. What's there to be hesitant about? You'll be even stronger than before if you accept it. Think about what it means for our chakras to be linked. Kyuubi stopped pacing around at that, his eyes becoming wide with surprise as he finally realized the meaning of it. Genjutsu will no longer be effective on me. Genjutsu had been the bane of his existence. That's how Madara enslaved him a century ago. And that was also how he had been mind-controlled after getting out of Kushina's seal. The fact that the Uchiha Sharingan would no longer have power over him immediately removed any hesitation he might have had about making a contract with Naruto. You won, Kyuubi said. No, we both won, Naruto said, smiling in relief. You get your freedom and protection from Genjutsu, and I get a reliable companion too. As Naruto smiled and raised his hand, for the first time in a century, Kyuubi smiled too as he bumped fists with him. Konan Dano, we have received your letter. Konoha is interested in exchanging coal for our shinobi's safety. However, your terms are beyond what the village can afford at the moment. In the aftermath of Akatsuki's invasion, I believe it is in both of our best interests to meet and talk face-to-face rather than through a letter. I propose Takumi Village in the Land of Rivers as our meeting point. As it is a diplomatic meeting, I will come together with only 2 aides. As a fellow leader of a hidden village, I believe you know what is best for the prosperity of your people. Although weakened after Akatsuki's invasion, Konoha is still a force that one would rather have as an ally than an enemy. Please let me know your answer as soon as possible. Should you decide to accept to meet us, before any further discussion, I demand you bring proof of my shinobi's well-being. Tsunade, the 5th Hokage. Putting the letter down, Naruto asked Konan, what are you going to do? Are you going to meet them? As vital as it is for them to retrieve their prized shinobi and their Kekii Genkai from our hands, we need their coal just as much. We have no choice but to accept their proposal, she said. What if they tried to pull something dirty? After they tried to capture him while he was in the hospital, Naruto's faith in Konohagakure's goodness disappeared completely. Resting her chin on the back of her hand, Konan smiled at him as she said, I will have you with me, won't I? With you by my side, there's nothing they can do to hurt me. Definitely, Naruto said and grinned, happy at how much faith she had in him. I will protect you with my life. As Konan took a pencil and started writing her answer to the Hokage's letter, Naruto looked at her in silence. Noticing his gaze on her, she tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear, inwardly smiling. To her, his behavior was so obvious that she could easily tell what he was thinking about. He's so innocent, like a puppy who can't get enough of their master's attention. That thought almost made her let out an uncharacteristic giggle. Fortunately, she managed to hide it behind a fake cough, and then she shifted her attention back to her letter. Konoha is still a force that one would rather have as an ally than an enemy. She's clearly provoking us here, Konan said, furrowing her brows in thought. But that's just empty bravado. If she was that confident, Konoha's troops would have been at our gates long ago. Konan had never forgotten her childhood, the suffering that she experienced during the war-torn era of Amigakure. Her family died at the hands of Tsunagakure shinobi, while Nagato had witnessed Konohagakure shinobi killing his parents in front of his eyes. The large powers of the ninja world never ask for permission. They never negotiate with the weak. They take what they want, they kill, destroy, and pillage with no regard for anyone's fate. She had never forgotten her pain, and her hatred for the large villages had never diminished. The only reason Konoha has not started a war with the Land of Rain despite losing their Mokuton, their Sharingan, and a Hyuga male as well is that they don't dare to. They know by now that Naruto has the Rinnegan and that he's loyal to AIM. Speaking of Naruto, Konan jumped slightly when two hands unexpectedly landed on her shoulders. You looked tense, he said as an explanation, and he started gently massaging her shoulders. Konan involuntarily released a sigh of comfort as he massaged her tense and tight neck and shoulders. Ugh, it's so good. But this isn't a good moment. I need to focus on the letter now, she said, putting her hand over his on her shoulder. I'd be more than happy if you continued what you're doing in half an hour. Okay, no problem, he said. In the next moment, Konan froze as she felt his lips touch the crown of her head. Her amber eyes were wide with surprise as she turned her head to look at him. Sorry, I didn't mean to. It just felt like the right thing to do. He began to apologize when she stood up to face him. When her brief expression of surprise was replaced by a smile, he felt as if a weight had been lifted off his chest. But as she unexpectedly wrapped her arms around him, it was his turn to be stunned with surprise. You don't have to apologize, she said. I understand your feelings, and I accept them. Her words made him embrace her fiercely, his arms tightening around her to the point where she was having trouble breathing. As he buried his face into her neck, the soft fragrance of her short hair overwhelmed his sense of smell. He wasn't well versed in recognizing and describing scents, but if he had to guess, she smelled a bit like cinnamon and something else that he couldn't put into words. He really is like a puppy, Konan thought in amusement as she heard him inhale her scent deeply, filling his lungs with the smell of her. A while later, he finally let go of her, but he did not break away completely. It was the first time in his life he had experienced such close intimacy with a girl, with anyone. She was so soft and warm, and she smelled so good that he couldn't get enough of it. Drunk with the feel-good sensations triggered by his hormones, he couldn't find the will to let her go from his arms. As their heights were similar and there were less than 10 centimeters between their faces, he could feel her warm breath on his lips. Maybe it was only his imagination, but when he wetted his lips, he could even taste its sweetness. Bringing his hand to cup her face, he inwardly wondered at the softness of her skin as he caressed her cheek with his thumb. When she leaned into his touch, he felt his stomach lurch with his feelings for her. "Can I kiss you?" he asked, his voice only a breathless whisper. Short line removed. 1 week later, among shinobi and civilians alike, Takumi Village was one of the most well-known and most frequented places in the Land of Rivers. Famous for its craftsman skill in making shinobi tools and weapons, it had often been the target of other hidden villages, both friendly and hostile, during wartime. However, after the end of the Third Ninja War, as the great hidden villages entered a period of relative peace, Takumi Village was slowly forgotten. Now, nearly 20 years later, most weapons shops had been closed down as the craftsmen started directing their manufacturing skills to produce different things needed in times of peace. It slowly became a hub for new inventions and technological breakthroughs. The reason why it was such a famous place for shinobi, even after so many years, was that the daimyo of the Land of Rivers hired missing nins for the sake of protecting it. Therefore, many shinobi and kunoichi that went rogue often tried to seek refuge under the wings of the Land of Rivers daimyo. As Konan explained to him all those things, Naruto gawked at the shops and street vendors with great interest. For a village that had lost its main source of revenue decades ago, it looked like it was flourishing. "We have arrived," she said, stopping in front of a large, 3-story pagoda. "How many shinobi do you sense inside?" he asked. He could enter the sage mode and find out for himself, but he didn't want the others to interpret it as an act of hostility. 5 shinobi and a few dozen civilians. I assume that 3 of them are from Konoha. The other 2 ninja must be the daimyo's bodyguards, Konan said. Her sensory ability was very good. "Lady Konan of Amigakure has arrived." At the servant's announcement, all the occupants in the room turned their heads to the door. The first to step inside was a woman with short blue hair, orange eyes, and a gray cloak obscuring most of her body. The only other features that stood out in her appearance were the piercing in her lip and the light blue paper rose ornament adorning her hair. Knowing the fragile diplomatic position Amigakure was in at that moment, even with her love for Akatsuki and the ideals it stood for, Konan chose not to wear the infamous cloak at this summit. As Naruto stepped through the door after her, Tsunade involuntarily rose to her feet, and Shikaku and Hayashi at her side both became tense. After witnessing Pain's massacre and the destruction of their village, the sight of Naruto's purple, inhuman eyes sent chills down their spines. "Greetings, Daimyo, Hokage Dano," Konan said calmly. Whereas the daimyo returned her greetings right away, Tsunade took a moment before replying. "Greetings." Once Konan sat down at the round table and Naruto took his position standing at her back, the daimyo cleared his throat before saying, "As the daimyo of the Land of Rivers, I will be your moderator. I hope you will be mindful of the fact that you are on foreign, neutral territory and work towards reaching a peaceful conclusion to your dealings. Let the meeting proceed." Minding her manners, Konan remained silent, letting the Hokage speak first. "I will start by asking for you to show me proof of my shinobi's well-being. If you don't have that, I have nothing further to talk about with you," Tsunade said, the tone of her voice speaking volumes of the rage smoldering inside of her. When Naruto stepped forward and placed an envelope on the table in front of her, Tsunade couldn't keep her calm anymore and suddenly punched the table, smashing it into smithereens. "How could you do something like this, Naruto?" she yelled. "How could you have killed Mato Guy? How could you have betrayed the village? How could you side with the terrorists that had been trying to kill you for years?" "This meeting isn't about me explaining myself to Konoha," Naruto said, not even flinching at the table's destruction. "I answer only to Lady Konan now, Hokage." The calm tone of his voice and his confident and indifferent demeanor doused Tsunade's anger like a miracle. In the meantime, the daimyo was sweating like a river under his clothes, his heart about to jump out of his chest. His 2 bodyguards were clenching the handles of their weapons tightly as well. Although the daimyo was paying them a fortune for their services, they did not have a sense of loyalty towards him. After all, they were missing nins, criminals. In front of the rage of someone as powerful and violent as the slug Sannin, they were quaking in their boots, levitating the photos that had been scattered out of the envelope and fell all over the floor when the table was destroyed. Konan made them float in front of the Hokage. Aside from Haruno Sakura, who has had her arm chopped off, everyone else is in perfect condition. But her arm was reattached, and she is healthy now too, Konan said. At Naruto's request, they had not been tortured or interrogated. They've only been imprisoned, with their chakra sealed. Sakura got dash. Tsunade didn't continue her words. She was so angry that her body was trembling. Noticing the state of his leader, Shikaku hesitantly came forth and started speaking in her place. Returning to the original purpose of this meeting, it's impossible to acquire the amount of coal that you are requesting in a short period of time. But we are willing to deliver that amount to you in several smaller charges over the course of 6 months, as long as you also do us a favor besides returning our captured shinobi. In exchange, we would like dash. Shikaku's words were suddenly cut off as a fast and heavy object whooshed through the air. In the next moment, the Land of Rivers daimyo's head flew up in the air, and blood erupted from his neck like a geyser. Kubikiri Bocho, Hayashi said in recognition when he saw the huge blade embedded in the wall after beheading the daimyo. The daimyo? Who dares? The daimyo's 2 bodyguards yelled at the same time. Shikaku, Tsunade, and Hayashi all became tense and ready to battle. There are 4 intruders. Judging by the size of their chakra reserves, they are powerful. Prepare for battle, Naruto, Konan said. Understood. The 2 of them had agreed on a plan of action beforehand in case things went south, so Naruto didn't need any further instructions. Shinra Tensei. As he said those words, the outer wall of the meeting room was blasted into pieces. Obscured by the clouds of dust and debris left in the wake of the wall's destruction, Naruto and Konan jumped out of the pagoda into the open space, landing on the rooftop of a smaller building in the daimyo's residence's courtyard. If you had to make a grand entrance, at least you could have gone for the Jinchuriki's head, you dumb cretin. This loud bitch again. Shut your damn mouth for once. Both of you stop it. Jugo and Suigetsu, keep the Hokage and the other 2 busy. Karen, conceal your chakra and hide until you are needed. Hearing the last voice, Naruto didn't need to see it to recognize who was the one that spoke. Sasuke. As Sasuke jumped out of the destroyed building too, the air also started shimmering, and an orange-masked shinobi wearing the infamous Akatsuki cloak appeared out of nowhere. When the orange-masked shinobi looked at Naruto, he couldn't hold back his disbelief. The Rinnegan. His voice suddenly filled with anger. Obito screamed. It's not enough that you betrayed me, but you've even given Naruto the Rinnegan? The heavens are my witness, Konan. Your death will not be an easy one. But Konan didn't reply to him. Spreading her white paper wings wide, she took to the air behind Naruto, filling the air around her with countless paper tags. Interesting eyes you've got there, Naruto. Even more interesting was to hear that you, of all people, have defected from Konoha. What has the world come to? Sasuke said and laughed. The idea of joining hands with you to destroy Konoha once and for all doesn't sound bad at all, but, unfortunately, I have been hired to kill you. Now, let's see whose eyes are better, yours or dash. Sasuke stopped his tirade when Naruto suddenly bent over and started coughing, holding onto his throat as if he were choking. In the next moment, a crow came out of his mouth, a crow with a special dijitsu in its eye socket. But before Madara or Sasuke could react, even before the crow could do what it had been programmed to do, for paper blades sliced it into pieces, splashing its bloody remains all over the place. What was that, Naruto? That looked like one of Uchiha Itachi's crow summons. Are you okay? Konan quickly asked, worried. I'm fine, Naruto said after catching his breath. I'll explain later. There's no time for that now. He had completely forgotten about the crow that Itachi had implanted in him. He didn't know what the crow's power had been supposed to be, but he didn't have time to mull over it. Not when 2 Uchiha were emitting such deep killing intent towards him. Momentarily, all 4 of them were completely silent, the screams of the scared civilians running away sounding particularly loud in Naruto's ears. But then, Sasuke suddenly said, Amaterasu. As a tear of blood fell from his eyes, a conflagration of black fire suddenly engulfed Naruto. However, the screams of agony that Sasuke had been expecting didn't come out. Instead, the flames, which were said to be inextinguishable and hotter than the sun, shrank rapidly, dissipating completely into Naruto's hand. Bansho Tenin. Sasuke lost control over his body as he felt himself getting pulled towards Naruto's hand. Even as he was pulled towards the blonde, Sasuke quickly put his hands in a tiger seal, and a huge fireball came out of his mouth. However, his fire technique failed again as a pair of azure arms grew out of Naruto's torso, and formed the hand seals to cast the Kage Bunshin technique. Gakido, the newly summoned clone, said as it sucked in the Great Fireball technique. Right as Naruto was about to catch Sasuke in a chokehold, Obito appeared behind Sasuke's back and whisked him away into the Kamiri dimension. But Konan had been waiting for her chance to strike all along, so she made full use of it once the opportunity arose. She knew that in order for him to teleport others away, he had to materialize his own body. While the orange-masked Uchiha was still in the middle of teleporting Sasuke away, 3 paper tags glued themselves to his neck and right arm. Crap! Obito thought as his body was blasted into pieces. Don't let your guard down. He still has the Izanagi, Konan warned Naruto. While they were waiting for Obito to use his technique and rewrite his fate, suddenly, the large pagoda collapsed with a great noise, and a scream of agony pierced the sky. As the rabble was blasted away, a rotating dome of chakra came into view, revealing that the 2 Konoha Nins were completely unharmed. The debris of the collapsed castle moved again as Tsunade punched her way out. At that moment, Obito also appeared in the air, not too far away from them, with Sasuke next to him. I took Sasuke with me, thinking he'd be of help to keep Naruto busy, but he ended up being a dead weight. I didn't expect Naruto to have the Rinnegan. He decided to attack Konan when she left the village in order to not go through a similar scenario like the first time around, to eliminate her home advantage, and to prevent the possibility of falling into her trap again. After all, although he had his Izanagi, his stock of Sharingan eyes was limited. But his plan went off the rails from the very start because of one variable: the Rinnegan. He had not expected Konan to have actually given Naruto those eyes. Should I retreat? Or should I seriously try to go for the kill? Now that Naruto had the Rinnegan, Obito didn't believe that he could fight against him while holding back in order to capture him. There were also the Hokage and the other 2 Jonin that he had to be wary of. But if I killed him, the Nine Tails might take even up to a decade to appear again. The plan would be delayed for too long. On the other hand, if I retreat now, I will be giving Naruto more time to fully master the abilities of the Rinnegan. I cannot do that. He knew exactly how powerful and dangerous a competent Rinnegan user could be. He didn't want to imagine the possibility of Naruto learning how to wield those eyes perfectly while also making full use of the Bijuu's power sealed inside of him. While Obito was still debating in his mind whether to continue attacking or retreat, the Hokage came in front of them, dragging Jugo's monstrous body by the neck. Her clothes were torn and soaked with blood, but her body appeared to not have even a scratch on it. "Jugo," Sasuke said quietly, inwardly alarmed. Jugo was a very powerful and dangerous foe once he activated his Kekkai Genkai. Sasuke knew that better than anyone. Between Jugo and Suigetsu, he had not expected the Hokage to defeat them both and come out of it unscathed. "Things are finally going well for once," Tsunade said as she threw Jugo's corpse at Sasuke's feet. "I get to beat the snot out of both of you traitors and bring you back to the village with my own 2 hands. Lady Tsunade, I advise you to be careful. Not now, Shikaku," Tsunade said briskly as black marks started spreading from the seal in the middle of her forehead, covering her face and the rest of her body too. On one side was the undying slug Sannin with a powerful Hyuga and a shadow jutsu user. Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Sasuke with his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan made up another team. And lastly, a Rinnegan-wielding Naruto and a former member of the Akatsuki made up the 3rd team. The 3 sides were staring at each other tensely, waiting for the others to make the first move. It was a 3-way deadlock. Previously, on one side was the undying slug Sannin with a powerful Hyuga and a shadow imitation jutsu user. Uchiha Madara and Uchiha Sasuke with his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan made up another team. And lastly, a Rinnegan-wielding Naruto and a former member of the Akatsuki made up the 3rd team. The 3 sides were staring at each other tensely, waiting for the others to make the first move. It was a 3-way deadlock. There are too many civilians around. If we start a fight here, hundreds of people might get injured or even killed, Naruto said in a whisper for only Konan to hear him. "You're right," Konan agreed. "Let's take the fight away from here. We'll shunt Shin to the outskirts of the village, and then run towards the desert of the Land of Wind." Understood. Naruto disappeared with a puff of smoke, and Conan's body dispersed into a myriad of paper butterflies at the same time too. "I can sense their chakra signature. They won't get away. Sasuke, you chase them on foot," Obito said before disappearing with a swirl. "Hayashi, Tsunade also shouted, "On it!" The Hyuga acknowledged and made a ram seal as he activated his Byakugan. They're running straight to 9 o'clock, with Obito and the Konoha team running away in pursuit of Naruto and Konan. Sasuke suddenly found himself alone in front of the demolished castle. Momentarily, he didn't give Obito's order any importance, and he seemingly forgot about his grievously injured or possibly dead comrades too. There was only one thing on his mind. What was that? How did he absorb my Amaterasu? He couldn't make sense of it. His black flames had even defeated the complete form of the eight-tailed demonic beast. Why would they fail now? That's as far as you go, Obito said as he materialized in front of Naruto and Konan. His eyes narrowed when he saw that Naruto's face was now covered by a rebreather, but he didn't give it too much importance. Clasping his arms together as if during a prayer, the ground started shaking like an earthquake. I know the Rinnegan can absorb all ninjutsu, but there is a limit to how fast you can absorb chakra. I want to see how you are going to deal with this. Konan and Naruto were monetarily stunned at the sight of the monstrosity that the Uchiha had just summoned to fight them. It had to be over 100 meters in both height and width. It was a titanic wooden statue with countless arms growing from its back. As impulsive and as filled with anger as she was, Tsunade felt as if she had been dropped in an ice bath when she finally caught up to Naruto and witnessed the orange-masked Uchiha's technique. Grandfather's jutsu? She said in disbelief. It was something that she thought she would never get to see again in her lifetime. As far as she knew, Yamato was the only Mokutan user still alive, but he wasn't even a tenth as powerful as Hashirama Senju had been. Someone like Yamato would never be capable of casting the true several thousand hands technique. Shikaku and Hayashi also stared at the enormous wooden statue with their mouths agape. It was only the arrival of yet another gigantic silhouette that broke them out of their stupor. It was a construct of purple light, a winged samurai of immense proportions. It was Uchiha Sasuke and his Susanoo. Naruto! Sasuke screamed as his Susanoo pulled back the string of its crossbow and fired off a huge arrow of black fire. Simultaneously, the massive wooden Buddha statue made loud creaking sounds as dozens of arms split from its backside and started punching at Naruto and Konan below. Even with how confident she was in her strength, the seeds of doubt started sprouting in Tsunade's heart. Although outwardly she didn't show it, deep down, she started wondering about their chances. The enormous wooden Buddha statue and the huge Susanoo were things that most people have only heard about as legends. The battle taking place in front of her eyes was simply not something that she and her subordinates could interfere in. Not even her mitotic regeneration would be enough to guarantee her survival in the face of such devastating attacks. Their ninjutsu was reshaping the land. Despite the devastating attacks heading his way, Naruto didn't lose his cool. As he made a cross-hand seal, 3 shadow clones popped up at his back. One of the clones instantly ran off a large distance away with a body flicker movement. Meanwhile, the other 2 clones and the original prepared themselves for battle. "Gakido," one of the clones said, extending his hands in opposite directions towards the 2 attacks. With one hand, he was absorbing Sasuke's fire arrow, and with the other, he started absorbing the enormous wooden hands punching in his direction. "What?" Obito said in disbelief. He has already learned how to use the Rinnegan through his shadow clones? While the absorption rate of the Preta path wasn't fast enough to instantly render his wooden technique useless due to its sheer size, Obito was far from pleased with the result. By summoning that statue, his plan had been to overwhelm Naruto with its attacks and force him to stay on the defensive, making him unable to use any other Rinnegan jutsu except for the Preta path. However, due to the fact that the shadow clones could use Rinnegan techniques too, it meant that the real Naruto was still free to act as he pleased. Therefore, Obito's strategy ended up backfiring. At the moment, he was doing nothing more than feeding his chakra to his enemy. As the Uchiha slapped his palms together once again, the giant wooden Buddha statue stopped its attack. Letting Naruto continue draining his chakra would be idiocy. He needed to think of a different strategy. Bansho Tenin. As Naruto and one of his shadow clones shouted, Obito was suddenly yanked forward, outside of his control. "This is bad. My Kimui can't stop it." Obito had never fought against a Rinnegan user before. The fact that Deva Path's pulling ability could still affect his body even while he was using Kimui took him completely off guard. Damn it, this ability again. Sasuke cursed through gritted teeth and unsheathed his sword as he was unexpectedly pulled out of his Susanoo by Naruto's Universal Pull 2-1. As Naruto had already expected, although his Rinnegan's Universal Pull worked on Obito and pulled him forth, Obito phased through his shadow clone, not allowing any hits to land on him. But on the other side, the original Naruto caught Sasuke by the wrist that was wielding the blade. At first, Sasuke tried to forcefully yank his arm away from his grasp, but Naruto's grip strength was like a vice. The orange pigmentation around his eyes betrayed the fact that he was already in Sage mode. Out of the 3 shadow clones that he had summoned at the beginning of the fight, the one that had shunshined away had started gathering natural energy right away. Thanks to the outer path, by making use of its black receivers, the shadow clone could transfer its Senjutsu chakra to Naruto continuously, like a stream, without needing to dispel. Arg! Sasuke cried out in pain and dropped his sword when Naruto clenched his hand harder around his wrist, snapping his bones. But the Uchiha was far from done. Despite the terrible pain coming from his broken arm, he twisted his body and kicked at Naruto's head, only for the blonde to catch his kick too, effortlessly. Being held up in the air by his right arm and left leg, Sasuke could do nothing but try to attack with his remaining limbs too. But his eyes widened in shock as 2 more arms sprouted out of Naruto's torso and caught his remaining limbs too. Momentarily, he couldn't understand how it was possible for someone to have 4 arms. Uchiha Madara had never told Sasuke anything about Rinnegan's abilities because, in the first place, Obito himself had not expected Konan to have gifted Naruto the Rinnegan. Initially, they thought that between the 2 of them and their Mangekyo Sharingan abilities, killing Konan and capturing Naruto would be like a walk in the park. Konan! Now! Naruto shouted, his voice muffled by the rebreather covering his face. The myriad of paper sheets filling the air around Naruto suddenly burst apart. But, unlike her previous strategy to use exploding tags in order to counter Obito's Kamui, this time it was different. Poison? Obito's remaining eye widened in surprise. A dense cloud of purple smoke burst from the hundreds of paper sheets floating around them, filling the air with deadly poison. Although he was quick to react, Obito had still inhaled a mouthful of the toxic fumes. So that's why Naruto was wearing a rebreather, he thought as he broke into a sprint, trying to get away from the poisoned area as fast as possible. But as he ran, he suddenly stumbled and felt his eyesight getting blurry. What kind of poison is this? He thought, quickly getting alarmed. He had only inhaled a mouthful of that poison, and his body also possessed Senju Hashirama's cells. A small dose of poison shouldn't have such a strong effect on him. How do you like this poison, Madara? Konan said as she flew after Obito, her paper tags continuing to release the toxic fumes everywhere. I've never thought I would one day be grateful to Hanzo for anything, but I do have to thank him for his poison. Even a decade after his death, the poison contained in the poison sac of the Black Salamander is still as deadly as when he was alive. But Obito didn't reply. He was afraid of inhaling more of that poison. Suddenly stopping his sprint, he slammed his palms on the ground. Mokuton, deep forest emergence. Poison? That was your big plan? Sasuke said with a scoff and actually started laughing. Poison doesn't work on me, loser. Due to Orochimaru's experiments and training, Sasuke had become almost immune to all poisons. Despite the fact that he was being held in the air by all his limbs, the Uchiha didn't appear to be too worried. The reason for his calmness became apparent when a dark purple chakra started coming out of his body, quickly taking the form of Susanu's ribcage. However, Sasuke's smugness was short-lived because, in the next moment, one of Naruto's shadow clones appeared from behind and smashed his punch into his back. Under the enormous strength of his Sage mode, the Susanu's ribcage appeared as though it were as brittle as glass. Sasuke cried out in agony as the clone punched him brutally in the spine. When the clone threw another Senjutsu-enhanced punch, this time to the back of his head, Sasuke's body turned limp. He was knocked unconscious, foaming at the mouth. But even after he knocked him unconscious, Naruto didn't let his guard down. Activating the Preta Path, he drained Sasuke of most of his chakra, leaving behind just enough for him to not die. Not a second after he was done draining Sasuke's chakra, the ground started cracking and shaking again as a large number of vines and trees suddenly grew out, transforming the desert at the border between the land of wind and the land of rivers into a towering forest. This isn't good, he said, and, focusing his sage senses to detect Obito's location, he broke into a run, leaving the unconscious Sasuke under the watch of his shadow clone. With a huge and dense forest in place now, Konan couldn't easily spread her poison clouds around. But, more importantly, I can't use my Bansho Tinin to pull him like before, Naruto thought. Now, all that Obito had to do in order to prevent his universal pull was to materialize his body. This way, all the trees around would act as barriers, preventing his body from getting pulled forth. This was a failure. What a big failure. I have miscalculated, Obito thought as he ran away, shinobi jumping from one tree to another. Normally, he would have just teleported away, but Konan was in his pursuit like a bloodlust bird of prey, not allowing him even a moment of respite, spreading her poison and raining with paper shurikens from above. If it hadn't been for Naruto, I would have torn her to shreds. His frustration and anger were at a boiling point. In normal circumstances, someone like Konan wouldn't be that much of a challenge to him. But, in the present, he was poisoned and running out of breath, and he also had to consider the Rinnegan-wielding Jinchuriki that had started pursuing him from behind. I can't let this continue. Whether it was because he was poisoned or maybe Naruto's Sage Mode was more powerful than his initial estimation, Obito wasn't sure about the reason, but the fact was that the blonde was closing in the distance quickly. Too quickly. I only need 2 seconds. That was how long it would take him to teleport himself away with Kamui. 2 seconds seemed like a very short period of time, but in a battle between high-caliber shinobi, 2 seconds were more than enough to decide the victor. Suddenly forming a tiger seal with his hands, Obito turned around in midair and shouted, "Katon!" Great fire annihilation. It was like a sea of fire came forth from his mouth. Fire techniques weren't particularly quick, so Konan had enough time to fly away from the Jutsu's area of destruction, but Obito had achieved his purpose. He had bought himself time to escape, but before teleporting himself away, he felt the need to leave a few words behind. Don't think, even for a moment, that I will let you enjoy this victory for long. I will be back, and I will be back with a vengeance. However, when he tried teleporting away, much to his horror, his Kamui wouldn't activate. No, more than that, he couldn't even move one muscle. Shadow possession technique. Success. It was then that he noticed the shadow linking him and Shikaka Nara, who was a few meters away from him. After Obito's enormous fire technique had set a big part of the forest ablaze, Shikaku had a very easy time catching him with his shadow. The stronger the light, the darker the shadow as well. A powerful wave of chakra burst out of Obito's body, and, despite his skill with his clan techniques, Shikaku's shadow possession was shattered. Instead of throwing a jutsu back in retaliation at the one who had dared to attack him, Obito recognized the urgency of the situation and activated the teleportation ability of his Kamui technique again. But all of a sudden, a palm strike landed on his back, disrupting his chakra flow. A split second later, 5 more gentle fist strikes shook his body as if he had gotten hit by bullets. All of you rats are popping out one after another. I'm going to kill you all. Obito screamed enraged, and wooden spikes suddenly exploded from his body in all directions. Due to his rich battle experience, Hyuga Hayashi anticipated the danger and swiftly backed away before shouting, "Katon!" Obito didn't even have time to get a glimpse of the rotation performed by the Hyuga before Tsunade's hand shot towards his face like a viper. Under her brute strength, the orange mask shattered like glass. Had Obito been at full strength, he could have still managed to react in time and dodge her attack or make his body intangible. However, the poison that he had inhaled in the beginning and the second mouthful of poison that he had breathed in for the sake of casting that large-scale fire technique had dulled his reaction speed and spatial awareness. Horror settled on his disfigured facial features when Tsunade plucked his last remaining Sharingan eye out and clenched her fist around it. She turned it into nothing but a paste of blood, just like she had done with Danzo's Mangekyo Eye several weeks ago. Tsunade didn't deliver any speeches. She didn't gloat about her victory or try to humiliate him by bringing up his declaration of war at the 5 Kage Summit. She was fully focused on finishing the job. The yellow chakra that gathered around her fist seemed to distort the air as she threw a punch with her entire strength, fully intent on turning him into nothing but a smear of blood on the ground. However, at the very last moment, a voice came from behind. Bansho Tinin. Obito's body was yanked away, and Tsunade's punch missed him, landing on the ground instead. ignoring the massive crater she had just created in the ground. The Hokage quickly turned around with a wary look on her face. The look of wariness quickly melded into shock when she heard Naruto say, "Ninjendo." Then, under Konoha Nin's disbelieving eyes, he yanked the soul out of Obito's body. The three of them watched in trepidation as he threw away Obito's lifeless corpse like a dirty rag before turning his attention to them, a cold gleam in his Rinnegan eyes. Tsunade, Hayashi, and Shikaku tensed as Naruto stepped forward. But, with a flutter of wings, Konan landed next to him and put a hand on his shoulder before telling him in a quiet voice, "Leave it to me, Naruto. Okay, but don't let your guard down." She offered him a small smile before stepping in front of him to speak with the Hokage. Their small exchange, however, did not escape Tsunade and Shikaku's notice. "This might not be the best moment or the best place to continue our negotiation, but it's better we settle everything here and now instead of postponing it for another day. What do you say, Hokage Dano? Unless you want to continue fighting, dirty, sweaty, and grimy, after a life-and-death battle in the middle of a burning forest." It was indeed a terrible venue for them to finalize their negotiations. Tsunade took her time before replying. "I won't say that the lives of my people aren't worth the amount of coal you're asking for. However, we don't have such a big quantity stocked up, not enough to trade it to you without leaving ourselves in the dark. I suggest we trade it in several trips over the course of half a year." This sounds reasonable, but what guarantee do we have that you will hold your end of the bargain? Unless we also kept your shinobi captive and released them one by one after each one of your shipments. "Konan Dano, Hokage-sama, forgive me for speaking out of turn," Shikaku said. "I would like to ask Naruto, do you hate Konoha?" Naruto didn't reply right away, and Tsunade's heart grew heavy the longer he kept silent. "I don't," he said eventually, "but I don't want to come back. I am a shinobi of Amigakure now. In AIM, people respect and acknowledge me. I'm not just a shitty genin who gets treated like the village idiot by everyone. I'm a jonin now. I am Lady Konan's right hand. So don't waste your time trying to convince me to come back. It won't happen." "That is not our intention," Shikaku said calmly, having expected as much. "But, since you don't hate Konoha, is there any reason why we cannot be allies? AIM and Konoha don't have to be enemies. Allies are supposed to be in an equal relationship. Give and take. It is a two-way road," Konan said, a pondering look on her face. "What is it that you expect from AIM? And what is it that Konoha can offer in return?" While Konan was negotiating the terms of their tentative alliance with the Hokage and her aides, Naruto's shadow clone returned with Sasuke's unconscious body in tow. Distracted by their arrival, Tsunade asked, "Uchiha Sasuke, is he still alive? What are you going to do with him?" "I held back. He's not dead. Just unconscious," Naruto said. "I could hand him over to you." When he trailed off like that, Tsunade understood the hint. "What do you want in exchange?" "I want to visit the Uzumaki Shrine in Konoha." "Does that place still exist?" she asked. Her grandmother, Mito, had been a Uzumaki, so Tsunade knew the place that Naruto was talking about. But after Pain had turned the village into a crater, hardly any buildings were still standing. "What do you want to go there for anyway?" "There is nothing but a bunch of strange masks." As far as she knew, even before Akatsuki's invasion, the Uzumaki Shrine had been in a state of disrepair, a derelict left untouched since the death of the fourth Hokage. "It's the only thing remaining from my clan. I'd like to take those masks and keep them as a memento." Hearing his answer, Tsunade shrugged her shoulders. She knew that Naruto was the type to collect souvenirs and keepsakes from all the missions he had been on. He was that kind of person, so she didn't think too much about his seemingly random request. As he watched Hayashi Hyuga silently block the unconscious Sasuke's Tenketsu to seal his chakra pathways, Naruto tuned out the discussion between Konan, Tsunade, and Shikaku. "Looks like, in the end, I did bring him back to Konoha. Somehow, I ended up keeping the promise I made to Sakura." The situation was so ironic that he almost laughed. He captured Sasuke and returned him to the village, but he had become a missing nin himself. Technically, he wasn't a missing nin anymore after swearing his allegiance to Amigakure, but the fact that he had abandoned Konoha still stood. "Sasuke has gotten so powerful since I last saw him. I don't know how I would have held my own in a fight against him without the Rinnegan." His Sage Mode was very powerful, but Sasuke's Amaterasu flames were extremely troublesome. They were even more dangerous than the enormous avatar of chakra that Sasuke had summoned because, in spite of its size, Naruto's Toad Sage strength was high enough to shatter it. But there was no defending against those black flames. Without the Rinnegan, his only option would have been to dodge them as if his life depended on it. Ever since you left the village, Hinata has not been the same. Hayashi's words broke Naruto out of his thoughts. I didn't just leave the village. I got thrown in the worst prison on the continent for a crime I didn't commit. Naruto bit back. I see you are still bitter about it, Hayashi said with a sigh. You probably know about it, but our clan suffered in a similar way a few years ago. My brother had to sacrifice himself for the sake of peace. Despite the fact that we weren't in the wrong, Kumogakure was. But this is what being a shinobi is all about. As shinobi, we fight, we kill, we sacrifice, and we endure for the sake of our village. Naruto wasn't impressed. Did the elders or the Hokage ask you to convince me to come back? The Hyuga shook his head. No, it is all for the sake of my daughter. Oh, so you care about her now? Hayashi frowned at his biting retort. I've always cared about her. It was Dash. It was all for the sake of making her strong. That's what you're going to tell me, I bet. Realizing that he was quickly getting incensed the more he was talking to him, Naruto took a breath before saying, whatever. I don't care about your parenting. I don't care about Konoha. You're wasting your breath, old man. I'm never coming back. As for Hinata, she's a good girl. But I've never had any special feelings for her. It was all one-sided. It would be wise for her not to follow Sakura or Ino's example by chasing someone who had abandoned the village, because I'll say it again. I'm not coming back. My home is in Amigakure now, by Lady Konan's side. I understand. As the boy had made it clear that he wasn't interested in Konoha or Hinata, Hayashi didn't pester him any longer. Putting Sasuke's unconscious body on his shoulder, he left and joined his comrades. Left alone, Naruto drifted back into his thoughts. It was unlike him to be so quiet and taciturn, but the information that he had received by using the human path to rip Obito's soul out of his body shocked him. That guy wasn't Uchiha Madara. It was an imposter. Uchiha Obito's memories from when he was a young child up until the present had flooded his brain. His memories of the Third Ninja War, of Namikaze Minato, of the real Uchiha Madara, and of the day of Naruto's birth when Obito killed his mother and caused a genocide in Konoha by manipulating Kyuubi to attack the village. Nothing was hidden. His death was too good. He couldn't feel a shred of sympathy for him. Not after watching his mother screaming in agony while the bijou was being ripped out of her. The atrocities committed by that man were making his blood boil, but his dark thoughts took the back seat when Konan called him out. Naruto, can you come here for a moment? I need your opinion on something. Just hearing her call out his name was enough to make him smile. The fact that she needed and valued his opinion filled him with joy too. Even after a few months away from Konoha, he was still not entirely used to how she tried to include him in all the important matters related to the village. He had craved other people's acknowledgement his entire life, and Konan was giving him that, and more, every day. Whenever his mind went to her, his heart would swell with his feelings for her. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed exploring this what if with me. If you did, please consider leaving a like and subscribing for more videos like this. Your support truly makes a difference, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Let me know what you'd like to see next. Until next time, take care and stay tuned for more.